This is Andy Crouch from All About Beer. I wanted to take a second to thank Highland Brewing for coming on as an underwriter. We appreciate having the support of Asheville's original craft brewery and love that the folks at Highland get how important it is to support beer journalism. If you want to join Highland and the other companies helping us pay our writers, podcasters, and artists, check out allaboutbeer.com/support. It's an affordable way to join the All About Beer community.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl, and as this episode drops on the last day of 2025, I'm invited my colleague and All About Beer co-owner, Andy Crouch, on to talk about the year that was for our media company and what we have planned for the year ahead. Journalism, like the beer industry, is in a difficult spot. We know you rely on good news and information, just like you do a quality pint. Supporting your local brewery is important, so is supporting the sites and shows you believe in and trust. From podcasts to articles to events, this was an eventful year for All About Beer. We were honored by both the British Guild of Beer Writers and the North American Guild of Beer Writers, and we were able to pay writers, editors, photographers, and illustrators for great original work. allaboutbeer.com/support is where you can check out ways to keep us rolling through 2026 and beyond. I know times are tough for a lot of people, so I appreciate your willingness to help. We'll get into it all and more. So without further ado, here's our conversation. Hey, Andy.
How you doing, John?
What kind of year has it been?
Ooh, it depends on who we're talking about. It has been... It's been a year for most people.
For most people,
yeah.
yeah.
If you're depends if you're a citizen, a lover of democracy, a brewer, a bar owner. Everyone has had a year. I think all told, we've I think almost survived the year. That's probably about the best thing I can say for most folks.
Yeah. From the standpoint of a small niche publisher.
I think in terms of, we're here, which is
it's actually pretty exciting. I'm not trying to, start us off on this like doom and gloom because it's not like it's, we're recording this December 18th. This is coming out on the last day of the year. We're headed into 2026. I feel like, all things considered and the frustrations of owning a small business, which, anybody who's had a conversation with me over the last 3 years, I've been like, I never wanted to be a small business owner. Like this was never in my, in my bucket list or, like I never felt the call of the entrepreneurial spirit. And now I have all of the excitement and stresses and everything else, but it is, I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about 2026, despite all of those things that you just said.
And I apologize for dragging you into this. I'm not sure that you could really have foreseen this when we sat down and went round for round with Pilsner Urquell at that bar in Jersey City so many years ago. But now this is where we have landed. And, essentially, for the All About Beer, business, in, October of 2018, this venerable publication that had been going on since 1979 closed. It went into bankruptcy. It was done, and that was the experience of so many publications. So many beer It's not just beer publications, but media and publishing industries in general are experiencing incredibly tough times. And in the beer sector in particular, you can't count on two hands the number of publications that have closed. Celebrator and Beer Advocate Mag and Ale Street and so many brew newspapers and even websites like Porch Drinking. Sadly,
Draft and Good Beer Hunting and
all of these places have closed down for one reason or another. But I think that with that said, we are here, and we're not just here, but we're doing reasonably well, and we're putting in the work. Every week, you are working your butt off. I know, trying to raise funds, but also putting new content out into the website, and we're running dozens or probably hundreds of podcasts, episodes a year and dozens and dozens and dozens of stories, in addition to social media. And we are very thankful for the, hundreds of thousands of folks who have visited our website and read our work, and the hundreds of thousands of folks who have downloaded, our podcasts over the year. And we've got plenty of other folks to thank, but I will
Oh
say in
yeah.
an industry right now where craft beer, it's not surprised that craft beer is experiencing tough times. The Brewers Association's numbers that just came out said, for the second consecutive year, more breweries closed than opened. We had about 268 breweries opened and 434 closed. They expect volume to be down even more than 5%. But, with that said, we are dedicated here to covering this industry that we love so much. And we are very thankful for both, the readers and the audience and the listeners, but also all of the businesses and individual supporters that we'll shout out during this episode for sponsoring, underwriting, and donating, and also reaching out with either likes or comments, sometimes positive, sometimes less positive, and we're excited about that.
This is starting to feel like a public radio telethon. And it's not fully designed for that, but I mean I've been saying this week after week on the show. If you listen to Em and Don's show, the All About Beer podcast, they've been saying it. It comes up on Brewer to Brewer the podcast. It's on the website. It's on every article at the bottom. But the only way that All About Beer can continue to do the work that we all love and to pay writers a fair wage and photographers a fair wage and illustrators and editors and everybody is through the audience support.
Yeah, and
So yeah.
and we're very happy with that support, and we'll talk more about it. But yeah, as you said, this is sort of the end of the year podcast. It's naturally the time when we get together and kind of reflect on things that have gone on in either craft beer over the year or all about beer, and that's kind of the purpose of today's podcast. So I think we should get into some of this, and I'm going to
Okay.
start by, you know, the work that we do here. As you said, it doesn't come for free. We pay writers and illustrators, photographers, podcasters, and even ourselves, which
Yeah.
feels good to be able to do this. And we have been very thankful and very fortunate to have been rewarded and awarded this year for some of the work that we did. And I definitely want to celebrate. We'll start with just with you in terms of your podcast. Drink Beer, Think Beer it is a podcast that, while it doesn't ever seem to run away with the first place award, man, are
No.
you are often the bridesmaid. But I got to tell you, I'm not sure there's a podcast that has won as many awards as yours has in recent years. Continually, you are in the top three of podcasts. Whether it's at the North American Guild of Beer Writers or at the British Guild, you're just winning awards and awards there. And I still say, when I listen to the episodes, yeah, I'm not sure there's anybody who's better doing it. And it's
That's
not
very,
just because
very
you're my
kind.
partner here. You get right to the heart of it with folks and are obviously very experienced. And I think the audience, definitely reflects that. They love it.
And that's been I love doing this show. This is one of those things where I get to come down to the basement office, or if I'm traveling, I'm out in the world kind of thing. But it is the conversations that I've had. I was sort of reflecting on where we went with this show over the course of the year, and it's really fun hearing brewers or industry folks or just fans, whatever, really talk about like what's happening for real and the frustrations and the excitement and the innovation. And so many of the conversations I've been having in the last couple of weeks as well, especially when you're hearing the doom and gloom about the industry and the really bad headwinds, more and more optimism is seeping through. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's coming through in the conversations as well. Whereas, in those early days, I mean, we launched the show right before the pandemic started. And, I mean, so six plus years now, or it'll be 6 years in March, right? And, going back to some of those shows from April and May of 2020, where there's just absolute panic and terror in
Yeah.
everybody's voice and like, what's going to happen to the industry? And then, slowly climbing out of it and all of that. And I think over the first half of this year, I was hearing similar things and, the audience was hearing similar things as well. And now I feel like there's still a lot to be worried about, but we're coming out of it. So I'm excited about. I started planning out some of the shows for 2026, and I'm excited about where we're going and some of the things that we're going to be doing. So thank you for the kind words.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I too share that excitement. And whether it's, attending beer festivals or visiting new breweries or talking with new folks, I'm 25 years into this and I still get very excited about it. I was just down in the Tampa area visiting family and only had a little bit of time to sneak into Ybor City and to visit both Berry House and Sky Puppy. But had a chance
Yeah.
to talk to the folks at Sky Puppy, and it just great to get out in the world, talk to folks who are basically have been open now for especially there they've been open for about a year and a half or so, and the place is just so characterful and so much time was put into it's so thoughtful, whether it's the beers or the decoration and just the entire vibe that they've created there. It is reassuring to know that craft beer, there is still passion, there's still energy out there. And I agree with you. I'm starting to feel, I have for maybe the last year or so, um, folks getting their sea legs a little bit here. And we're certainly going to still see plenty of closures and folks who understandably decide that, they've just, the road has been really hard, and that doesn't mean you need to ride that into the ground. It's perfectly fine, as we've talked about many times, to step away. But for folks who are still out there going with passion and still very excited about it. It's great to get out and see those places, and I look forward to telling some of those stories, in this new year.
Yeah. Um, well, you started talking about the awards and the third place wins that this show has gotten in the past, but we had a couple of other um, we were honored in a couple of other ways as well. The North American Guild of Beer Writers this year gave a second place to Galen Williams and Steve Shapiro for the story that they did about Toronado.
Yeah, that
Um,
was a good one. That was one of my favorite reads of the year.
Yeah, and that was one of those things where it took us a good couple of months to put that story together because there was so much uncertainty around what was happening with Toronado. I mean, it's
It
such an
still
important
is.
beer bar, yeah, and that was the thing. So at some point, I had a conversation with them, and I was like, I think this is the story now. That it's
Yeah.
just, sitting here in limbo, and they wrote the hell out of it, and it showed me, it's one thing where when we're assigning stories, I'm always looking for folks who understand the subject matter, right? I mean, we get a lot of pitches of somebody saying like, "Oh, I'm going to be visiting San Francisco. I
Yeah.
live in
Yeah.
Toledo, but I'm going to be visiting San Francisco, and I'd love to write about blah blah." And it's like, sure, but I need somebody who can write with context, who understands the day in and day out. And Gail and Steve certainly did that with this piece, and I was so glad to see them rewarded for that.
Yeah, and they have that great quote from Dave Keene, about he feels like he's arriving at his own wake or whatever it was. And it was just a well written piece, and so they were, very, very deserving of that second place in the best local reporting category. Yeah, we also had, you also took another. You have this unmatched ability to write these April 1st, April Fool's Day pieces. And whether it's, New Glarus pulling out of Wisconsin, which I don't know will ever be beat, but if it
Yeah,
was,
that was our most famous one from years ago.
but beyond that one, the 2025 GABF moving to Bierstadt from the Colorado Convention Center had a lot of people really confused. And that piece took a second place in short form writing that was well deserved. And it was also, one of our most popular pieces of the year.
Yeah.
People really liked that one. It was, I think, our
Um,
third most popular piece of the year.
I still haven't heard from Bart Watson on that one, but I'm just gonna assume that we're okay. They've approved my credential request for the Craft Brewers Conference this year, so I feel like I'm probably okay.
I knew that was
Um,
tenuous, but
Envelopes of cash to soothe my ego. Thanks for
yeah,
taking care of that, Andy.
anytime.
But the big one, obviously, this year was you taking first place in the national or international reporting. And you did a profile last year on Alex Kidd, the broadcaster, the podcaster, the internet celebrity, the prolific writer. And it was a piece sort of tracking his life. We called it From Fresno to Famous. And the NAGVW gave you first place in what I think is the biggest category that they put out. And that was a long story, a well reported story. I mean the judges were really effusive in their praise of you on that, and you tackled it so well.
I definitely appreciate that. And I appreciate all of your support and help. Basically, this whole podcast is just going to be us patting each other on the back. But we'll also,
Everybody's
yeah,
tuned out before
which
we've
it's
gotten to
fine.
the
It's
good
just
part.
this is
Yeah,
more of a therapy session than anything else. It's
this doubles as our office party as
it
well. So
really
yeah,
does. Yeah,
yeah,
the budgets are very small for beer media, so enjoy it. But yeah, thank you. That was very, this was a piece that was more a labor of love than anything. It just Alex really opened himself up from day one for that piece and really, poured his heart out. Obviously, he is in a difficult health situation with his cancer diagnosis and is doing by all accounts here, incredibly well. But he was just very open about his life and his circumstances and his thoughts on the industry. And I thought it took a really long time to try to put that all together. And it was incredibly long. It was 13,000 words, which is something we don't see that often. And one of the other things the judges agreed was that it probably could have been shorter, and they're probably not
yeah,
wrong about that. But
yeah.
there just was a lot there, and we're very happy to have put that out into the world. And yeah, and thanks again to Alex and for everyone who for participating and everyone who read it. And ultimately, this led us to win the third place in the Publisher of the Year category, which I think is especially impressive because we didn't, frankly, enter that many articles and entries into this year's North American Guild of Beer Writers Awards. And
Yeah.
those we did, we had a pretty good number that brought home some hardware. So we're very very proud of that as well.
Yeah, yeah, we really did not put a lot forward this year. We're going to do more next year, but that was a really cool a really cool get, and especially with how competitive the categories. I mean,
Yes,
we talked about a lot of the places that closed, but I mean there are places that are still doing it out there, and I mean it's Matt Curtis and his team over at Pellicle. Uh,
just doing really great stuff. They're
yeah,
leading the way, and they just won Publisher of the Year at the British Guild of Beer Writers Awards, where that rascal Matt Curtis beat me in the Best Beer News and Business Communicator category. He
you
took
took second.
it was well. I was happy about that but he took first, well deserved. But Pellicle's doing great stuff, and they're kind of also living on the model that we are, where it's we're every week, every day, we're kind of just putting it together, trying to scrape together all the resources we can and the support we can from readers and from supporters and underwriters and sponsors. But they're producing some really beautiful stuff over there that I also I recommend folks support every beer media
Yeah,
publication or podcast,
most of them.
especially financially to the extent you can. And Pellicle certainly should be on that list.
Yeah. I mean, I say this all the time. I mean, the folks of, what Jess and Zoe and Kennel are doing over at
Yep.
Brewbound, I think is important. Dave Infante is just killing it wherever Dave Infante shows up these days. Chris Shepard over at Beer Marketers Insights. I
Yep.
mean, even the BYO folks, I mean, are still just, really doing a great job covering that part of the beer world and keeping that flame alive. I mean, there's still beer media out there, and it's worthy of your support if you think if you think it's valuable. But that second at the British Guild of Beer Writers Award that you mentioned in the Beer News and Business Communicator category was for your column "Why Craft Beer Needs a New Generation of Beer Bars," and I'll admit, when I saw the first draft, I was like, I'm not sure if this is what this is going to be. And then you got it together, and I think you've had this great ability in writing your columns, and you have a whole place on our website now dedicate all things Andy Crouch, the unfiltered column, the unfiltered home of Andy Crouch at allaboutbeer.com. But you really tapped into something with this beer bar story.
Yeah, folks really responded to it. I appreciate that. Yeah, as you noted, I quietly a couple of months ago launched Unfiltered, which is just a we're kind of at a point now where the internet is has come back around to the days of blogging, whether it's Substack or Beehive or other public other forums like that. But essentially, journalists are leaving larger publications and going back into blogging, and that's sort of what we're doing here as well. I'll still write longer form and other articles for the website, but just this is a place where I can do sort of somewhat shorter stuff or columns or more opinion based stuff. And this one is one that's been kicking around in my head for a number of years. Just see, for me in terms of coming up, I really needed, really leaned heavily on craft on beer bars to sort of curate that experience of showing you the world's best beers. And they really took the leadership and the pioneering position for so many years, but then for a whole variety of reasons, they were sort of left behind, or they failed, or they failed to evolve, or the birth of the growth of tap rooms really ate their lunch quite considerably. But I think that once that happened, and as much as I love tap rooms, I think something is lost when we don't have those leaders. Those pioneers, and I can understand why some would consider them gatekeepers, and that's a certainly understandable criticism. But those folks really spent a lot of time. Those publicans were whether it's Michael Roper or plenty of others, just take time to sort through all of the craft beer that is out there, and there's more craft beer out there than there's probably ever been.
Oh yeah.
To just try to find the best stuff and to put it on tap, not just your average beers, but the ones that are exceptional, either because of the brewery or the product, or hopefully the combination of all of these different things. And so I've seen some great places doing some really interesting things, and I think for me, the one that I keep coming back to is Delaware Supply Company in Albany,
Oh
which is
yeah.
this tiny, tiny, tiny little corner bar essentially that serves a couple of sandwiches that are excellent, but just also has a beautifully curated draft list with beer that is in top form from around the world, and it just is you can go into tap rooms around the country, and there's very, very few of them that produce world-class beer, let alone multiple versions of world-class beer. It's just something that's exceedingly difficult to do. So for when these places are able to kind of cherry pick and tell a story, and also just the ability of these craft beer bars to not only curate but also present and tell the story. That is how a lot of these smaller breweries got their first starts, at places like the Hop Leaf or the Map Room in Chicago, or countless other places, Falling Rock around the country.
Yeah.
And these places, whether it's proper glassware, proper temperature, proper pour, just care. They just took care and loved these beers and helped educate the public. And I think that has been sort of lost in the transition to then take over from tap rooms.
Yeah. Well, people liked it. People read that. It was one of the top articles on the website this year. A bunch of your articles were really favorite pieces this year,
What
or
can
at
I say?
least
I'm just very talented.
or
Yeah.
at least well read, if not a little bit hated. Um,
There's probably an element to that as well, but
Reddit was really, you did a piece on Goose Island that just ran a couple weeks ago. That was a lot of fun to read. And the headline is "The Lie That Goose Island Loves to Tell," and it's all about how they've sort of fudged the year that the original Goose Island came out. Overwhelming evidence that the year they cite on the bottles is not the year that it was first made. And the people of Reddit really didn't like you for that.
no, they hated it. In fact, and I'm trying to pull up some of the comments that and this is I am just happy that folks in this day and age are reading.
Yeah, it's
And
important. Yeah.
I have absolutely no problem with anybody having issues. I wrote hundreds of columns for Beer Advocate magazine back in the day, and folks are more than happy to let me know all about it. But yeah, I'm just trying to the folks, I like the guy who says this guy comes off as a bitter loser. That was very helpful. And yeah, some of the other ones we can't say on a family friendly podcast. But the word
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Pedantic was thrown around.
pedantic and douchebag were thrown around a few times. And then if I there was one, I think the best one, and I do have to say I thank you, Buddha Rockstar. This should be on Blue Sky or Twitter, my new background, but it said. I've read a lot of really stupid beer articles over the last decade, but this may very well be the stupidest. I don't know who downvoted that comment, but I like that comment. That's great. Buddha Rockstar, I appreciate your reading.
That's we'll link it to his profile when we get up there.
One
and
of
it's
the
been yeah, go ahead.
one of the I think the most striking, we talk a lot about the stuff that we're publishing here, but we're also publishing things like Gail and Steve did, but we also and we're trying to do more of that in the new year. We'd love to publish. We obviously pay some sponsor support some podcasters like M Sauter and Don Test to do the All About Beer podcast,
Oh yeah.
and we support other writers and artists and photographers and doing their
And
work. But
and
what?
I'll also just point out just on the podcast thing really quick. On Brewer to Brewer, when the brewer hosts that show,
Yes,
we're paying them to do
that's
that.
an excellent point.
It's absolutely unfair to ask brewers to share their knowledge, give their time, give their experience without paying them. And so
Right.
since episode 1 of that show, uh, we've been paying brewers when they sit in the host seat for that work. So
Yeah, we
yeah.
expect, just like for us, we expect, nobody, we don't have anybody do anything for free. We're always trying to pay them to do things. And again, not to, sound like the public radio telethon, but there's a reason they do that. The work doesn't come for free. We pay all of these individuals, and the way we do that is through, the support of listeners like yourself and sometimes the companies behind them. And certainly if you're interested in offering us support, there's more information on our website at allaboutbeer.com/support. Also, you can email me at andy@allaboutbeer.com or John Holl at allaboutbeer.com. And we'll be more than happy to talk to you about ways of sponsorship or underwriting, or for those of you who are just individuals and want to do it as little as $5 a month, please consider donating at patreon.com/allaboutbeer as well. We have, and we'll talk more about sponsorship in a little bit, but we've got many dozens of supporters, and on Patreon who contribute, from $5 to $50 or $100 a month, and that goes a long way for us to be able to pay folks outside of this. And I'd like to talk about some of those folks that we are some of those outside writers, especially that we worked with this year, and we worked with folks from around the globe. But I think one of the really interesting ones was about a brewery in Hawaii that had really fallen on some hard times, and I know that you had worked very hard, John, on that particular piece. So why
Yeah.
don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. I mean, it was after the Maui fires were absolutely just so devastating. There was a brewery there, Kohala, that was, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I should be better at that. That was destroyed by the fires, and the community rose up, the brewing community, the local folks, to help them. Continue brewing. They moved production to one of the other islands, kept distributing, kept things going, and were able to open up their doors just earlier this fall. And to have a firsthand account from the brewers there, and through original reporting, was one of these things where, and coupled with the photos that the brewery shared of the devastation afterwards, as well as the opening and the new life behind it, really just sort of drove home the devastation of this, but also the sort of the hopefulness of people banding together, people getting together. And it was people responded to that story quite a bit. Like, everybody loves the feel good story out of tragedy, and
Yes.
beer has always been able to do that. Anytime that there is a natural disaster, anytime that there is somebody who's in need. I mean, there's all of these stories that pop up of the brewing industry doing the right thing and being able to pay writers on the ground to tell these stories, because like, we can't be everywhere. And again, it goes back to what I was saying before. It would have been weird for me to parachute into Hawaii. I would have loved to have done it.
Yeah, I know
um
you tried, but I
I tried,
vetoed
and
that
we're like, yeah,
budget.
no, let's let's
Yeah.
let's 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 have the local writers do it. That's important, because only they can tell the story in the way that the story should be told.
We published a variety of other pieces as well that were fairly interesting, including one from the newly minted British Guild of Beer Writers Writer of the Year, David Jesudason. And he wrote a piece called "How Vault City is Challenging the Conservatism of Britain's Beer Culture," and that was a fun piece as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, where talking about pastry stouts and talking about a thoughtful approach to making some of these weirder beers that are out there, but that have huge followings. And I mean, weird is the word that I'm using. But they're tasty, and there's all these folks who line up for these beers as well. And one of the things that I think we've been better about going forward is, you mentioned All About Beer has been around since 1979, and two of us have been covering this industry, you a little bit longer than me, but 20 plus years at this point. And we can remember when it was very small. We can remember when we could probably recite every brewery in the US, and you could see trends coming from a mile away, and now they're happening, in the blink of an eye, and they're gone. But we've been focused a lot on the past and the history, and some of the more established voices, and by branching out to different writers and getting really smart people talking about things that in the past might not have made the magazine, or might not have been able to get the digital ink. We're able to tell a fuller story of what's happening in beer, and David's story, I think, was a perfect example of that.
Were there any other ones that struck you, in particular, any ones that you wanted before we move on to a new
No,
segment here?
well, I mean, just a few of the things that I've been trying to do this year is, a few more questions and answers, with folks, of just kind of getting into, um, you know, why are you doing this, and tell us
Hmm.
about your slice of the world. But I've also been having, or asking brewers to pen. Um, Reflections on beers that they're making, and like the intent behind the beer, the story behind the beer. And one of the ones that we ran this year was from Brandon Jones down at Yazoo and Embrace the Funk, who recreated a beer in honor of Ron Jeffries,
Yes.
of Jolly Pumpkin, who died earlier this year. And he recreated a beer that the two of them had collaborated on, a decade earlier. And he tells this really beautiful and poignant story of just how the beer came about, and to drink it now, and not to don't let it get dusty in a cellar. And live life the way life is supposed to be lived, in the way that Ron did. And sometimes going beyond just the label copy, or pithy little descriptions that people can give on rating sites, or websites, or whatever. Hearing what a beer means to a brewer, I think, can bring us all closer to the beer when we're able to drink it. And Jones did one of those this year. We had a couple of others that ran this year as well, and we're going to be doing more of those in the new year as well.
One of the things we talked about, earlier is, the sponsorship and sort of underwriting here, and on our plans for next year, we're really trying to get out more and get around the country and visit developing beer communities and experience new breweries and write about them, places we have not really spent a lot of time. And as you said, once upon a time, especially when we were younger, we probably traveled a lot more, but also there were fewer places to visit. Now, the Brewers Association, even with contractions, is still about 9,700 breweries in this country alone, let alone countries, breweries around the world. And whether it's a product of, the pandemic or both of us having young kids, our ability to travel is certainly a little bit more limited. And so I often find myself returning kind of to the comfort of the same places over and over again, like like Notch Brewing for me. And you have to just actively break out of that, and that's our plan for 2026. And also to just sort of reach out to more writers to be able to cover those places, to the places that we can't get to, or the places that they know even better. So along those lines, at the end of last year, you and I kind of quietly developed a plan to ask some craft brewers to help underwrite our work, and not just craft brewers, but just other supporters as well. We
Yeah.
reached out to many breweries, large and small, beer bars, hop providers, anybody across the board, and many stepped up to the challenge. And we have, as I said, on our website, have information about underwriting. Again, that's allaboutbeer.com/support. And in this year, more than 25 breweries and bars stepped up to help underwrite our work, and they make either a quarterly or an annual sponsorship offering, and we use that, as we said, to pay writers, like David and others, Brandon and all of the brewers, and Em and Don, who do all of this work. And just to, I don't want to laundry list all these folks, except I'm going to. And it's
Yeah.
we start out with Bright Eyes Brewing, or Bright Ideas Brewing, apologies, New Glarus Brewing, Sam Adams, Wallen Powpack, Lakefront Brewing, Athletic Brewing, Flounder Brewing, Left Hand Brewing, Rheingeist and Fox Farm, Mad Fritz, Human Robot, and Full Steam. These
Yeah.
were some of the breweries that helped us out this year, and I want to
Sure.
thank all of them.
Breakside Brewery, Big Grove Brewery, Highland Brewing Company, Allagash, CLS Farms out in Yakima,
Yep.
the New Hampshire Brewers Association, Heavy Seas Beer, Monk's Cafe, the great beer bar in Philly, 49th State Brewing in Alaska, Trillium, Chicago's Hop Leaf Bar, Schilling up in New Hampshire, Pure Project, Sacred Vice in Philly, Common Roots up in New York, Edmunds Oast. I mean, this list is so cool
Yeah.
when we get to see it. And I'm constantly doing outreach, showing folks what we're doing and how they can help out. And like I believe me, those emails are tough to send, because it's I know it's tough out there for a
Yeah.
lot of folks these days. And when you're out there saying like, hey, help us stay in business, and they're like, hey, we're trying to stay in business.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate it when people get back to me and just say, hey, we appreciate the work, we can't do it right now. And or other folks who are like, yeah, we see the value in this, and we're going to find a way to make it work. And it's really gratifying, knowing that folks in the industry that we're covering see the value in the work, and hope there's more folks out there that see it as well.
Yeah, and every time one of these underwriting sponsorships come in, it really it reinforces what we're doing. It helps buoy us. It helps us really build us up, and it feels good for us to know that there are folks out there in the community who support what we're doing, and understand what we're doing and what we want to do, and are offering us some financial support there. But we also have our audience and our Patreon fans as well, that are doing great stuff over there, and we hugely appreciate them. And in this new year, we're going to do a better job, whether it's shout out on the podcast or in social media, of supporting both the sponsors and also the folks who are helping underwrite us over at Patreon. But whether even a little bit helps us out. We're able to pay our the writers. We're able to pay the brewers. We're gonna, in this next year, try to expand our podcasts. We're gonna expand the number that we're doing.
Yeah,
Um,
more on that soon. Yeah.
yeah, and just the episodes, and just try to get more content out there. And really, we're honored to share these stories that help define the beer community, and we just wouldn't be able to do it without the generous support of the underwriting sponsors.
Yeah. And we know that there are a lot of folks who listen that are not in the beer industry, but who are avid beer fans, and
Yes.
who like to support, the beer industry. So if you come across any of those names that we just read out, give them your business,
Please
buy some of their
tell them.
beer, go to their tap rooms, tip their servers well if you can. They're supporting us. We're supporting them, and we hope you'll do the same as well.
Yeah, the commitment of these places really helps sustain, independent beer journalism. It allows us to highlight the people and the places and the passion behind every pint, which is something that we have always loved doing. It helps us tell stories like, about Alex Kidd and Vault City and breweries that are coming out of tragedy, and breweries like McNeil's and others, just telling these great stories, and their partnership. These breweries and others and other industry related organizations, their partnership really helps these stories, continue to inspire, connect, and celebrate, the craft that we love. So when you're in there, or even if you're not there, sending them a message or on social media or what have you, just thanking them for their support, because we certainly couldn't be doing this without them. And I think, for us, I think at least for me, my pitches to you are done now. We'll kind of talk a little bit more about our year here, but we're
Okay.
not gonna. I'm not here to ask for anything else, any for the sport, except to just say that we're very grateful for the support we've gotten so far this year, and look
Yeah,
forward to doing more in the new year.
100%. So
I'll
yeah,
move.
yeah.
I'll move you on to the
Okay,
next
move me
topic
on.
here,
Yeah,
as
that's
as
fine.
we, one of the
I like it when you're here, by the way, because I can just kind of
you just go on autopilot. You can just, I can host
no, pretty
things.
much. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. You do the hard work,
Your
for
natural state. Yeah.
yeah, for 51 episodes a year. I can come in and just coast on the
You
one
did a
for you.
couple of things this year. We got around to a
That's
few
true.
places this year. You did two panels at Schilling
I did.
for their
That was a that was
Oktoberfest.
a
We got to
that was a
go up
great
there.
event to finally get up to. Talk about passion, man. But the folks, the brewers
Oof.
attending that are just they're just so passionate about that particular event, and I understand why. I mean, Schilling has about as pretty a campus as you're gonna find,
Oh
right on
yeah.
the river there, and the small town. And it was really really incredible to be up there and to talk with some really great brewers to do those panels. And I appreciate, you're letting me co-host and take the reins there a bit.
Yeah.
But this sort
We
of
yeah, go ahead.
leads me into, one of the other things when I was going up there, was, you had noted, and one of the things we love to do is just experience new breweries and, meet new people who are new to us. But one of the things you told me I had to do while I was up there was, go across the street from Schilling. There is a brewery called Wild Bloom. And it's run by a gentleman by the name of Devin and his wife, and the two of them are
Devin
really
Bush, yeah.
doing Devin, yeah, Devin Bush, and the two of them put such have such passion for beer, and they are such kind people, that I was, as you put it, he's one of us. That's kind of means like a kindred spirit in some
Yeah.
form. Usually, I mean, usually it doesn't mean someone who likes to complain or criticize, unless that's, directed to me. That's, one of me, that, he's like
Yeah.
you. You don't really want two of those in one room together. But it's usually somebody who's like a lover of lager or an appreciator of style, somebody who likes simplicity but elegance in beer, traditions, but also with some opinion and perspective. And that's certainly the two of them. They've created this tap room the way they want. And it wasn't, in terms of like what we can talk a little bit here about some of the great beer and great places we went this year. It wasn't anything in particular at Wild Bloom for myself that was a top beer, except, all of them were exceptional in like kind of a remarkable way. And that for me was really the expressing the character of like local malt. And for at least in my experience, and maybe it's limited, this used to be a bit of an issue. Like local malt was something that I really like the idea of, in theory, but in practice, the malt could be inconsistent, the flavors could be sometimes a little bit off, or maybe it was just a little difficult to understand, the brewer's use of it. But here, I think Devon uses about 99% local malt. And I think it's a local New England malt, and I think it's almost all from Blue Ox, if I recall correctly, up in
Yeah.
Maine. And you can taste it in these beers. The malt character is so substantial and so interesting that every beer, and I'm someone, I know you are as well, who loves like the accent and the flavor of malt, and it's often thrown out for hops or aroma hops or flavor or alcohol. But like when malt expresses itself, especially local malt, this is I think maybe the story I'm most excited about to see what happens in years to come.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things where we get, when we're told about, a new to us place or an exciting place that's doing cool things, we're eager to share it with other people. So we've been talking a lot about Wild Bloom. You mentioned when you were down in the Tampa area this week, I was like, well, you got to go to Sky Puppy because I was introduced to them earlier this year as well, and wish I had more time to be in there and to see what they're doing. And we get to talk with these brewers and then to sort of get a better handle on what's cool and what's happening, or not even cool, but just like what excites them and
Hmm.
what's driving their passion. And for places like Sky Puppy and places like Wild Bloom, or even and we talk about them a lot, but what Goodword does in
Yep.
pushing the lager game forward, or Yazoo and Embrace the Funk, really continuing to push the saison game forward. There's really cool things that are happening out there, and when we're in this job to be able to get a front row seat to this and then share it with folks, I think is it's important because like you know we don't just keep these things to ourselves. It's like if there's a cool place that you need to go to, you're going to hear about it through
Yeah.
us.
And you so if you find yourself in New England, you should definitely make a trip up to Littleton, New Hampshire. It's beautiful right up in the Green
Yeah, you
Mountains
got two great
or White
breweries right
Mountains.
there.
And you got great yeah, you can stop at Schilling. It's amazing, and then go across the street and see Devin and Beth. They're doing really interesting stuff. Other Another event we got to participate in this year was a little bit more rueful in the final rare beer tasting.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was 16 years of it. And Rick Lake, who founded it, Pints for Prostates, uh, All About Beer was the original media sponsor of that when it first started 16 years ago. And then we weren't for a while. And then when Andy and I came back with All About Beer, Rick called us up and wanted us to be a part of it and to help put that list together and help put great brewers in the room, pouring, I'll say big dumb stouts, but it's more
Yeah.
than that. I mean, brewers really, for Denver Rare Beer, which was such important event for so many years, like right up until the end, of just showcasing brewers' ingenuity and showcasing, um, you know you say rare beers, but just thoughtful beers that are hard to recreate if you do it once. And that was it was great. We were at Beer Snot Lager House for the second year in a row for that. And despite being in such close proximity to world class lager, most people were still staying with what people brought. And I mean, again, big fun stouts, and people went deep into the cellar. And Devin was there from Wild Bloom and brought um, his fresh hop beer from this year, which again, all New England ingredients and tasted, nothing like, what people might think that would be. Augie Carton of Carton Brewing was there with his white truffle triple, which don't ask how much that beer cost to make, but it's weird and it's fun. And Sam Adams shows up with utopias that they give treatments to, and um, it was a good event for a good cause, and I'm so grateful that we got to be there for the final one. And um, I hope other events like that can take place in the future.
I agree because it's really great to experience beer not just in tap rooms or at home, but also among other fellow beer lovers. And that was really you could really feel that in the crowd there that time. And a lot of the brewers were just really proud to be there and pouring for a good cause. So that was
Yeah.
That was a good one, and the GABF this year was interesting as well. Yeah, that is real. I know it had been maybe some time since you had been to the
Two,
GABF.
three years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
On
I
the
went.
floor. Yeah.
Yeah, I went last year and experienced the changes, and the changes continue to be greater there, and it was a really interesting experience moving from a place that was so beer focused to being what I guess they call makers now instead of brewers, which I thought was a little jarring to see with the makers lounge
I
and
just kept
welcome.
looking for bourbon, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I understand that, and like welcome makers. It was a little bit much. You can get booze on the floor. You can get NA. You can get basically anything. Yeah, anything you want. So it was an interesting experience
It's a
there.
real Alice's restaurant. Yeah.
It, and it was chaotic and frenetic, and old timey brewers complaining that they can't find Russian River or the breweries they're looking for. But it's the modern era, and they're trying to find their footing and do the best they can in very, very difficult changing times. And I'm hopeful that across the country we can see smaller beer events still thrive and flourish, and get out
And
there and support those.
And I know that there's a lot happening. And I mean, again, we kind of get stuck in our ways a little bit. If Todd DiMatteo says, "Hey, I'm doing something at Goodword," chances are I'm getting on a plane to go because I know it's going to be a good time. And Schilling Oktoberfest and all these things that are fun and important and a great place to learn and try great beers. But if you're listening to this and you think that there's a place, an event coming up that we should be going to, that showcases that cool brewing spirit, that great beer energy crowd, let us know. Reach out on email. Reach out through the website. Let us know where else we should be expanding to, just as attendees. Like I'll buy a ticket and walk around and just enjoy the fun. So it's a big wide world with a lot of cool events, and the better ones. I'm glad that we've morphed out of the distributor parking lot, beer distributor parking lot fests, and that
Mm.
they're more curated and thoughtful and smart brewers behind tables, you know, eagerly talking about their beer while pouring. Tell us where tell us where those are happening and why you think
And
we should be there.
yeah, and along those lines, not just for the festivals, but we run. Like I said, it used to be a lot easier for us to have an understanding of some of the best or most interesting places, or ones that just have interesting stories to tell. But now, a lot of that has to be crowdsourced out to the audience. There are 9,700 breweries in this country, and we hear from a lot of them with press releases and such. But to the extent that our audience is more hooked into local markets, we are always more than willing to take information on what breweries we should be covering, places that are doing interesting things, events or towns or cities that we should be going to. Please reach out with any of that information, and essentially it's intel for us, because we can take all of that, and we can't be everywhere all the time, but to the extent that we can come and visit, which is what we plan on doing more of in 2026, we will do our best to get there. And if we can't get there and we have the financial support, we'll send somebody there. So please,
Absolutely.
the audience, we're always our email's open, as we said, Andy at allaboutbeer.com or John Holl at allaboutbeer.com. We're on social media. Feel free to drop into our DMs and just let
Oh
us
yeah.
know. Let us know where we should be going.
All right. So as we wrap this up, um, I want to know, this is the time of year where it's, well, what's next year going to bring? There's a lot of crystal balls and prognostications. And what do you see for 2026 in the industry?
I think breweries are going to continue to get their feet underneath them. I think that we've seen a definite shakeout. One that I was not really quite old enough to experience the mid '90s shakeout, or at least not as a craft beer drinker, or someone who really focused much on that. But from talking for folks who were there, and certainly being a student of that era. They do come out stronger, and I'm not never been one who has thought that we are in a craft beer bubble. I don't think that we necessarily have too many breweries. I think that if you have a good story to tell, make good product, are well located and are smart about your business and reaching out to your community and trying to engage your audience and your customers, I think that anybody has a good shot at it. But we certainly have seen folks who are in it not necessarily for the right reasons get shaken out. Folks who were in it for plenty good reasons who just for one reason or another, that it just wasn't the right situation for them, or they just gave it their all and didn't have anything else to give. Those are all fine reasons. But I think in 2026, we're starting to see a little bit of positivity creep back in. Places have started to realize what they need to do to try to maintain success. I think they have also reoriented their growth understanding and expectations, whereas growth isn't just going to come to you. If you build it, they are not necessarily going to come, that you have to put in the work. But also you can't expect double digit growth every year. In this situation, success might be only losing a percentage point or growing a percentage point or two. But if you're able to, pay your staff and support your audience and support yourself and do it in a way that is also good for your mental health, I think that there are different measures of success. But I think we're going to start to see, folks, get a little bit stronger and continue to build back. In terms of, beyond that, we've talked about it maybe a million times at this point, and frankly, I did one of the Shilling podcasts was about this essentially, which is for many decades even we would always make the joke this is the year of the lager, and and I was just going back through some old stuff where thinking about how craft beer didn't get the respect it deserved, and we are sort of on the other side of that where it now some folks think craft beer is kind of over. I definitely disagree with that. I think that people are going to be interested in drinking craft beer, but especially I think there's a lot to be said for lager beer, and just the places that are doing it really well and are dedicated to it. And I think that there's something about easier drinking, but yet very flavorful, balanced, even sometimes complex lager beer is excellent. And I think that trend is just going to continue in 2026. And I have been ready for it for 25 years, and it has finally arrived. And I went to some great breweries this year that made some fantastic lager, including, I think one of my favorites was Working Draft in Madison, Wisconsin. I got to
Oh yeah,
get out there this year,
they've
and
been on the show. Yeah.
I play a ridiculous sport called broomball, and I play in the national tournament every year, and it goes to various different states. But this year it was in my beloved town of Madison, Wisconsin, where I've spent a lot of time over the years, and I just got to drink. They had a couple of beers there, including the Defrostinator Maibach, and Maibach is just one of those just beautiful styles that is there for a whisper of time during the year. It just is. It's a style that very few places brew, and it's gone almost before you know it. But this beer was beautiful and malty and with noble hops, and just was one of my very favorite things that I tasted this year. It was a beautiful spring day, sitting outside on their little patio. It was eating what turned out to be, I think, one of the world's biggest hot pretzels that I've ever seen. Size of you find your friend who has the biggest head, and this is twice the size of his or her head. And this Maibach was gorgeous. So I can't wait to see us get beyond just Czech style Pilsner, Czech dark lager, and maybe start to explore some of these other very noble, very worthy lager styles. I'm definitely here for that.
I love that. I have said most of what you have said on other shows throughout the last couple of weeks, and I agree on the optimism. And I think we're going to start to see some smart things happening this year, and we're going to start to see the seeds of new breweries that might not open until 2027, 28, 29, but they're going to be planted this year. And I'm hopeful that those folks are going to do smart things and become the next generation of smart brewers that are out there. And I'll agree with you on lager, but I think we're going to see more amber ales this year.
I'm fine with that too.
I think we're going to see the return of amber ales. Everybody's going to take a page from Alaskan's book, and just go all the way with it. There's, cool stuff happening in the malt space, as we were talking about before. I think that it's, visually striking. And when done well, great food beer. So I'm seeing a few pop up, and every once in a while a brewer will mention it to me, and it's just enough to raise my antenna enough to be like, I'm going to be paying attention to Amber Ale in 2026.
And I can't wait till 2027 when we start doing nut brown ale and blonde ale. That's going to be great. We're just going to go through. We're going to play back the hits.
Nitro Pub Ale
Can't wait.
2027, the return of Boddingtons. It's gonna it's gonna be great. But I'm bullish about this new year, and
Me too.
this is, again, it can't be done without the support of folks who are supporting us, who are, and that's, through the underwriters, through the advertising, but also just listening and reading. And all of the folks who spent time creating content with us this year, and who wanted their words and to appear on the podcast or on the website. It's really been gratifying, and I'm excited to, the next couple of weeks, introduce all the things that we're going to be doing for 2026 to get out there and continue on this mission of this company that is 47 years old. My gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
run up to 50.
Yeah, we have ambitious goals, and we definitely need your support. This is personal. This is we are a two-person business, and we just want to put more beer content out there. And to the extent, you hear these kind of pitches all the time, in public radio, wherever, like, but this is a person. Stop for a moment, and
Yeah.
if you can, and we know that not everybody can, but if you can, we would certainly appreciate it. It's very gratifying to have any support we can. But we're going to keep doing it every day. We're going to get out there, and I can't wait to see if I can make. Uh, Buddha a little happier next year. Maybe I can write some even
Jazz
stupider.
Buddha, Star Buddha,
Yeah,
who is
yeah,
it? Yeah.
just maybe some even stupider, stupid. Sorry, Buddha Rockstar. I'm gonna do an even stupider article next year. You just wait.
What do you want to see us cover in 2026? Who should we be writing about? Who should we be talking to? What are the topics you want us to get into? Reach me by email at johnholl@allaboutbeer.com. That's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. Please be in touch. Make sure you join the This Week in Rauk Beer group on Facebook, or follow at TW Rauk Beer on Instagram. Upload your photos, join the conversation. And you can support us by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support. When you're at the website, you can also check out any of our new content, as well as the archives, which go all the way back to our founding in 1979. And you can find the links to follow All About Beer on social media when you're at the website. If you like smart audio content, a reminder that All About Beer has a separate podcast channel. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And as for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.